Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, the major motion podcast, where we talk about the biggest and best films coming to theaters and streaming online. From the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm John Negroni, film editor for InBetweenDrafts.com. And from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he's a freelance film writer. And watch out, Will Ashton, you're swimming down the canal. Your boat's headed right toward me.
Ooh.
I love your costume.
I wanted to scare you because you finally watched a couple horror movies.
I mean, I don't understand that. I've watched horror movies all the time, and the thing that you complained about, right, was that I wasn't watching R-rated horror movies.
Sure.
And Haunting in Venice is not R-rated.
No, but another horror movie that just came out that I think we're also reviewing on this episode, unless you...
No, we are not.
All right, we both saw The Nun II.
Will really wants to talk about The Nun II. I want to just talk about A Haunting in Venice and keep this simple.
I think we could talk about both, because we've seen both. I don't think we have a ton to say about either film, and I think it'll be a fun time if you allow it to happen.
I mean, the main thing for me, as we talk about A Haunting in Venice, which I think is a horror movie in the way that like McDonald's is a sit-down fine dining restaurant. I don't get like why A Haunting in Venice is getting positive critical scores. I found it to be not great. Fair, like less than average, mostly average. I don't know. But let's talk about it, I guess. It's another Hercule Poirot movie. So we've talked about two so far on this show.
Yeah.
Say again?
Say Hercule Poirot.
Hercule Poirot. Which, so we got Murder in the Orient Express.
I am the world's greatest detective.
Your impression is unmistakable. Sure. Kenneth Branagh has been playing this character, this great detective or whatever. This is the third movie, and I guess what's an anthology? It's not really a trilogy or anything like that. I mean, I wouldn't call it that personally. They're not really connected, but they're all based on the Agatha Christie novels, right? And the Agatha Christie adaptations that have come before this. But Haunting in Venice is based on one of the probably lesser known ones. It's not as big of a one. I mean, Murder in the Orient Express is one of the most famous, and then there was Death on the Nile, which I guess less famous. These have been getting like less and less notable, I guess. I did not know that this movie was happening. We just got Death on the Nile last year, right? Did I forget that? Death
was
on
it
the
last year or was it 2021?
I want to say it was last year because I mean there was enough champagne to fill the Nile. They haven't been able to drain it ever since, right?
Right.
Death on the Nile came out 2022. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Death on the Nile just had a strange release because I think it finished in like 2019, and then it got delayed by the pandemic, and then it got delayed by Army Hammer's whole cancellation thing, the cannibal rumors, what have you. And so it just took a really long time for it to finally be released. So long, in fact, that Kenneth Branagh wrote, produced, directed, and filmed and released Belfast in the time that it took for him to, finish or release the film he finished prior to that.
Well, I think the reason that I just assumed this movie wasn't going to happen, like they were going to be done, was because I thought that Death on the Nile even coming out was more or less an obligation from when these movies were being made by 20th Century Fox, not 20th Century Studios. And so Disney got a hold of Fox in that time. And I didn't get the sense that there was still an appetite for these movies and like the new regime. Murder in the Orient Express, I mean, I'll double check, but that was a movie that people were expecting to be a massive hit. It was a decent hit. It made $352 million, modest $55 million budget, enough that they were like, all right, well, let's make another one. But then Death on the Nile, I mean, not a hit, pretty much a flop. I mean, it was bigger budget, $100 million. It made way less than half. It made $137 million at the box office. Big reason for that, I think, is because I thought Murder in the Orient Express stunk. It wasn't a great movie. It was built on hype. I think people saw the huge star-studded cast and were like, let's go. I want this movie. And then Murder in the Orient Express, I thought was like not that great. I think critics were a lot kinder to it than it deserved. And so when Death on the Nile came out, people were like, I don't care. I saw, no thanks. I saw Knives Out. Glass Onion comes out, or just came out, and that was way better. Sorry, like I'm not into it. For this one, for Haunting in Venice, they scaled it way back, to be fair. It's $60 million budget, The cast isn't nearly as star-studded. It's way more like back to basics, to a basics that these movies never have even been on.
Yeah. To the point where it's mostly TV stars, Belfast cast members, and Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, Jude Hill from Belfast, the kid, and also Jamie Dornan is in this, which I would, frankly, I was thrilled to see Jamie Dornan. I think he is like, well, if he had been the one in Death in the Nile instead of Armie Hammer, who knows what could have happened there.
Sure.
Yeah, like you said, Camille Cottin, who I think is on like a TV show like right now. It's kind of fascinating how different Tina Fey, not really like, I mean, she's been in a couple movies, I guess, but I mean, Tina Fey, I mean, it's us. Now, I didn't know she was in this. I didn't know anything about this movie, Will Ashton. I walked into this movie. This person dressed as a ghost handed me a thing. I don't know, like a bookmark.
You got something handed to you. Okay, so we also had a person with a mask and a black cloak and a lantern.
A lantern? Like I couldn't see my way. Like, okay, the lights are still on. Calm down. Okay, yeah. You know, Jessica.
So the lights were off on ours. I don't know if that was a thing where like it was intentional or they were just kind of covering up being like, it's spooky.
I think your theater just didn't pay the bills and they were trying to save a little bit of cash. We already have these lanterns.
I mean, I want to give 100% props to the production of the screening. Like it was, I think, even more impressive than anything I saw in the film. I was like, you guys really went above and beyond for what I find to be a fairly ho-hum film. But
well, one of the biggest stars here, by the way, I mean, besides Kenneth Branagh, who's, I guess he's a star. I mean, I don't want to go that far, but Michelle Yeoh, you know, coming hot off of Best Picture, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which kind of tells you that like maybe she's not like a prominent character in this movie, but she's kind of all over the marketing sort of after the fact because, you know, this movie was being made like in 2022, like while Everything Everywhere All at Once was kind of like blowing up. Mm-hmm. So the timing is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to answer your question before by saying, I think the reason these movies kind of endear me, because I don't like love any of them. I certainly agree that I think Knives Out and Glass Onion are just better. And they kind of feel more relevant and timely. But there is something I feel kind of charming about these movies. Like, even though I don't really love any of them, like I said, and like the only one I remember really liking was Murder on the Orient Express. Like I watched it 2 times, once in theaters and once in preparation for
I should have watched it twice because I fell asleep the first time and I forget what happens.
I think it's a charming movie, man. I don't know why.
I read the book and I guess it's a novella, but I forget exactly. But the source material is great. I mean, it's crisp, it's smooth. It's one of Agatha Christie's best. There's a reason it keeps being made into movies.
Right. I think that's what definitely helps that movie. Because like I feel like every Kenneth Branagh movie has like its quirks to them, and this one's no exception. Like he makes weird camera choices, and this one, it's like people are sitting down, but they're like fisheye lenses on their face, and you know, like there's always has the Dutch angles. Like the second shot of this movie is a Dutch angle, and I just smile because I'm like, Kenneth, you've done it again. But yeah, I think the big thing for me about these movies, the reason why if he makes like 500 of these, I'll keep watching them, is because I feel like they're not made for anyone but Kenneth Branagh. And I find that way more charming than something like The Nun II, which feels like a movie that's made for, you know, Warner Brothers stockholders. Like it's just a film to keep a franchise going. And I'd love to hear
this movie is better than The Nun II. That's my review of The Nun II.
Okay, yeah.
This movie is also better.
Nun II, because
in my opinion, this movie is better than Death on the Nile. Much better, and I think it's much better than Murder on the Orient Express. It's still not good, though, in my opinion. But
I still think Murder on the Orient Express is better, just because, like you said, I mean, I think the source material's there. I think it's just a stronger story. I think this one.
I can't get past Murder in the Express using didn't it use like an Imagine Dragons song in the trailer? Yes. I mean, stuff like that still haunts me. I don't know.
I don't know. I think this one, I definitely think it's a better sequel. I don't think it's better than Murder in the Orient Express, just because I don't find the mystery to be quite as compelling, and I feel like the horror elements aren't really as I don't know. It feels like not flimsy, but it just feels a little like shy, I guess. Like it would just kind of be a mystery, you know, crime thriller or drama, and then like someone will like drop a chandelier or something really loud, and it's like, oh,
whoa, spooky. Horror.
Like, it just kind of
Honestly,
feels...
this is like this movie, not because it has TV actors, but it has TV movie energy.
Yes.
I'm actually surprised the budget is $60 million. Like, is more than Murder on the Orient Express.
I wouldn't say I'm surprised. I do think there's the one thing that I think helps make this one stand out, even compared to Murder on the Orient Express, that there's an actual location here. Like, they have a really nice Venice vista, you know, like, or a villa, you know, like a big haunted house to play with here. I think that definitely helps, because, like, I think the thing that hindered the previous two was, like, kind of the wonky CG and the green screen, and it didn't really feel as, like, visually grand, I guess. And this one feels a little bit more palpable as far as location and the characters and whatnot. I think that definitely helps as far as, like, building atmosphere. But at the same time, like, as I was saying before, I don't really get the sense that this one has quite the same thematic drive. Even though I do think Branagh is, still in love with this character. I think he loves playing this character. And I think the reason the movie got made is presumably because he won an Oscar for Belfast. And they're like, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, I would love to play Hercule Poirot again. and it's like, all right, if you get for like 50 million, we'll do it. It's like, I'll do it for 60. It's like, so
well,
I'm assuming,
I think part of the reason it's missing that thematic drive, just to kind of voice it, is that it's only a very, very loose adaptation of a Christie novel. It's a very loose adaptation of Hallowe'en Party. I had to read the synopsis because I was like, this does not, like, this. I've read it. It's completely different. There's way more death in the original. And it's not all hauled up in here. Like, they take some things like the apple bobbing stuff, and there's a little bit here that I want to say to give it away, but it's very, very of, like, I don't know. Branagh kind of took the basic trappings, and Michael Green is the screenwriter, and he really just kind of ran with this, which I don't hate the idea that he did Murder in the Orient Express too, but I don't hate the idea of doing that because, like, a lot of people are pretty familiar with Christie's work, so it makes sense to kind of do something a bit more original. But it's just, you're not Agatha Christie. You're Michael Green, and I don't dislike Michael Green. You think he's a great screenwriter. He's written some terrific movies. Logan, Will Ashton, Blade Runner 2049.
Cool, yeah, good movies.
So I'm just saying.
I would say 3 at least pretty good movies there. If he also wrote Murder on the Orient Express. But that's neither here nor there.
That's where we disagree, but that's why we're on Cinemaholics. We're allowed to disagree. Sure. I mean, he also wrote Jungle Cruise, which I know one of your favorite movies of all time.
Okay.
He also wrote Green Lantern, the Martin Campbell film. What's the problem? Oh, Green Lantern. You don't like that movie?
Nah, that one's pretty awful.
He's by the way, he's going to be writing a movie that I think you are going to find very annoying, called BioShock. You heard the video game BioShock, Will?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was definitely interested in it when Gore Verbinski was attached to the project. I don't know. Yeah,
now it's Francis Lawrence.
Okay, whatever.
The Water for Elephants guy, Red Sparrow.
Hunger guy. Well, I mean,
I Am Legend.
Oh yeah, I like I Am Legend. That's a good movie.
So okay, I don't know what's going to happen there. Anyway, you were saying.
I lost my train of thought because we were talking about Francis Lawrence. I don't know where we were.
Your train of thought? Murder on the Orient Express? Haha.
All right, so Nun II. Did you see the first Nun?
Back to a Haunting in Venice. So the movie follows Hercule Poirot, who is, he's in Venice, of course, and he gets invited to this kind of like Halloween party. Then there's this big mystery involving like a mysterious death. Before that happens, they hold this seance because there was this girl who died under mysterious circumstances they believe was supernatural. And the mother of the girl is trying to communicate with the girl, like through Michelle Yeoh, who's a medium. She wants to find out, like, who killed my daughter? Was she really killed by ghosts or whatever? So there's a bunch of people in this group. Jamie Dornan plays this doctor. Jude Hill is his son. Tina Fey is the Agatha Christie kind of American novelist who is trying to like chronicle a new mystery by following around Hercule Poirot and kind of ropes him into this. There's also this other guy. He plays Poirot's bodyguard, but I forget who played him. But then there are a couple other like side characters, like a couple of assistants to Michelle Yeoh's character. Camille Cottin, as I mentioned before, plays this like housekeeper kind of character. Emma Laird is one of the assistants who is, I believe, from Mayor of Kingstown, which is one of those Paramount Plus shows that nobody has ever watched.
The second season was filmed in Pittsburgh, so I heard plenty about it.
So you're going to watch it.
Probably not.
Be true to your turf. Kelly Reilly, another famous TV actress, especially with British TV shows, is in this as well.
Well, I mean, I think mostly she's known now for like Yellowstone and like True Detective.
That's true. Well, yeah, because I was thinking of Suspicion, or Above Suspicion, excuse me. But anyway, all these people are in this house. Somebody mysteriously dies. No one can leave the house. All of these spooky things start happening, and Hercule Poirot starts seeing things. I thought Death in the Nile, it was kind of campy. It was pretty lame. I thought it was very gaudy. I thought it was overly produced. And I thought that a lot of the casting was pretty bad. But I rooted for it because I love Emma Mackey, and I think that she's on an ascent. And I think that Barbie was definitely a nice sort of redemption for her. In this movie, I like it conceptually. I had no idea what kind of movie this was. I was like, I haven't heard about this. I haven't seen any marketing for it whatsoever. No billboards. I haven't seen any commercials, no trailers, which is usually my own thing. In fact, Will, you got upset with me because I was like, I didn't even know this movie existed. And you were like, John, I told you about it. I brought it up when I was watching trailers.
Yes.
And I had to explain to you that sometimes I skim your trailers because I don't know what you're talking about, and those words just kind of escaped. They kind of slip into my brain. They came right back out.
For context, I don't even know how this bit started, but we always like give each other reports on new trailers we see.
And more rare for me because I don't usually watch trailers.
Right. That's how it started, because you don't watch trailers. So I'd give you reports on like what's coming out and like how it's looking and whatnot. And we'll just usually be like
Twitter. Well, now that I don't use Twitter, I don't have like a film Twitter thing anymore. So I probably would have heard about this if I was still using something like Twitter. I use Blue Sky and Threads now, which I don't really have film communities for right now.
Yeah, that's like, I just assume Threads is just kind of like, had a nice bowl of cereal today, LOL. And people are like, I had Frosted Flakes. And it's like, I had Honey Nut Cheerios. Is that what Threads is like?
It's not too far off, but no, I mean, Threads is kind of like Twitter with like less politics and less like drama. It is a little bit more. There's a lot of brand stuff. There's a lot of jokes. There are a lot of like memes and stuff at the moment. It's still kind of fleshing out. It's still kind of figuring itself out. A lot of Instagram people on there, to what you're talking about, like a lot of influencer types who are trying to take their Instagram and like put it on Threads. One of the features I like about Threads is that like you could easily share a post on Threads like to your Instagram story. So I've done that a few times. I think it's kind of fun. But that's the thing. It's not like a Twitter kind of app. Like you can't really use it like Twitter yet. Maybe eventually, but that's not kind of how. Like the closest thing to Twitter right now for me is Blue Sky. But Blue Sky doesn't have a lot of film stuff. Like it has some, but it's just like a little bit more sort of like more of like cinephile film stuff, not like big releases. And it's also very, very political. So I use both apps to kind of scratch that itch, but I'm not gonna lie to you, Will. Since we're on this tangent, and I find it more interesting than Haunting in Venice or the Nun II. I'm fine with that. Like, I don't want another Twitter. And we were kind of talking about this the other day, and you were kind of like, yeah, nothing. There's no Twitter substitute, and I was like, yeah, I mean, X isn't a Twitter substitute, but I'm like, oh well, like I don't care. I don't want Twitter again. Like now that I'm removed from it, I'm happier.
Sure. So, did you see the Nun 1?
Didn't we talk about it on Cinemaholics?
No, because I saw it late. I saw it after it came out. I saw it actually.
I didn't even bring it up in like a mini review, or because I did watch it. Yes,
I don't think so. I don't know. But
so you watched the Nun 2 without watching the Nun?
No, I had seen the Nun. That's what I'm getting ready to tell you. I had a funny story about how I saw the Nun 1. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it in addition to A Haunting in Venice. And that was because I saw the Nun 1, or the Nun, it's better known, at the drive-in during the pandemic. But I saw it after I saw The Exorcist for the first time. It was the director's cut as well. And I saw that and I was like, what a movie that lives up to the hype. Great movie, all this stuff. and then I had to see The Nun, which it's I can't imagine most horror movies would be benefited by playing second fiddle to The Exorcist, but that movie especially was like, man, that movie is awful. And even while I was watching The Nun II, I'm like, I genuinely don't remember. Like, I remember, like, what's her name? Taissa
Farmiga.
Yeah, like I vaguely remember she was in it, but like, Maurice was he in that one?
He
The guy
allegedly. I totally forgot. Now I talked about The Nun on episode 82 of the Cinemaholics podcast back in the fall of 2018. It was in one of our mini reviews in which we talked about A Simple Favor, BoJack Horseman season 5, White Boy Rick, Peppermint, Marvel Spider-Man for the PS4, Iron Fist season 2, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan season 1, and The Dragon Prince season 1. This was in our episode. The main review was The Predator. What a different time.
What a time capsule of 2018.
Yeah. I think it's one of the last episodes we ever had Maverick Hines on. I think he departed the show, maybe because of this episode.
Yeah, maybe. It was just like, talk about things that aren't going to age 4 or 5 movies that no one cares about anymore.
Simple Favor still holds up. BoJack Horseman, obviously, people still love. Yeah, White Boy Rick and Peppermint. People listening, there's lots of people listening right now who are just like, what is that?
Yeah.
But yeah, Dragon Prince was a great show. It's still going, but it's still very much in the shadow of Avatar: The Last Airbender, same writer. And Jack Ryan, which I never watched past the first like half that season. So. Okay. But Iron Fist, yes, you were a big fan.
Yeah, anytime you bring up these random tangents, I'm just going to go bring the conversation back to The Nun II so I can qualify as a review and justify the time and money I spent to watch it, because I thought we were going to be reviewing it. So
I never said we were going to be reviewing The Nun II.
So I will say The Nun II, I would say it's probably better than the first one, I guess, in the sense of like, I didn't watch The Exorcist before it, so I think that gave it a leg up in my estimation, my estimation, but I think it has a really solid opening, like cold open, and then everything else after that is kind of dull and tedious and repetitive.
It's for me solidifies that these Conjuring movies have just become McDonald's for horror movies. No thanks.
Yeah, because it's been officially now like 10 years since that first Conjuring movie came out, and it's fitting to bring up The Exorcist because like it's not quite that level, but you could see why it was earning comparisons to that at the time. And then obviously Warner Brothers being Warner Brothers, even before David Zaslav came in, they were like, let's capitalize on this movie that we made a big hit out of. And, I guess people still come to see them. But yeah, I mean, Curse of La Llorona, the Annabelle movies. I know some people like the second one, but, the third Conjuring movie. I mean, the second one's like okay, but
the second one's my favorite of all of these. I really like The Conjuring too. I don't love really any of the other movies at all. I like one of the Annabelle movies I like, and everything is just sort of, it's like, what if the MCU was all mid or worse? Sure. And at least with the MCU, like even people who hate it the most are probably like, there's some good stuff in there. Like you can find stuff in the MCU, like at least 3 or 4 movies out of 25. Well, now it's like 31, 32. You can find, like, I think even its harshest critics have at least like 3 where they're like, this is really, really good. But I don't know. This one, people like the first one. But I mean, do people love any of the Conjuring movies? I don't. I don't love any of them.
I think people love the first one.
I don't love A Haunting in Venice. That movie is just, it's annoying because like I kind of want to like A Haunting in Venice.
Sure.
Because I appreciate what it's trying to do. As I was watching it, I was like, you know what? This is a better way to do this. Like, strip it down, mid-budget movie. It's strictly for adults. It's not trying to be a music video. It's not trying to like, it kind of gives Hercule Poirot a little bit of an edge, but I think his character arc in this is pretty lame. Lame in the sense where I'm just like, I don't really get what this guy wants necessarily. He does things in this movie that don't make sense to me, and I think that it really rides on how much you like those first 2 movies and want to keep seeing this guy, but I find him charmless. I think you like him mainly, like, I think it's 85% the mustache is what has you
I think it's
charmed.
I think it's like 50% the mustache, 30% the accent, and 20% like knowing Kenneth Branagh is just a madman, both as an actor and as a director. And it's just like, I'm gonna keep making these mid movies, whether anyone cares or not. I'm just gonna do it, even if it's just in my backyard. But yeah, I think we kind of talked about the cast before you were going on talking about Threads and Honey Nut Cheerios and White Boy Rick.
Go on.
But I think the first one, I think that definitely like there's Leslie Odom, Daisy Ridley, like Josh Gad. There's like cast members I can think back upon, and, like they're doing good stuff, like Judi Dench as well. And the second one, like obviously, like it has some performances that are like kind of like nails on a chalkboard, like Gal Gadot and Armie Hammer and what have you. But I think there is, like you said, something to be said about kind of the spectacle of that film, like the fact that he spent however much money you said, like 100 million. It's like shot on 70 millimeter or 65 millimeter, I should say, and it's like mostly like green screens and these kind of garish, CGI and stuff like that. There is something to be said about kind of the wackiness of that one. This one, while I admire the more restrained atmospheric approach, I just feel like the cast doesn't really stand out as much. I mean, Michelle Yeoh gets a few good moments, but like, I don't know. I was going to ask you about Tina Fey's performance because it wasn't as miscast as I was afraid it was going to be when I watched the trailers.
I thought she was fine.
But
no
yeah,
complaints.
I never really felt like the performance felt very modern to me. Like it doesn't feel like of its time. Like it feels
I think it works because she's the American. And so she's written in a way to be like, she's the outsider. Now we are in this weird version of Italy where like everybody's British, like, okay, British or vaguely French. And I get it. It's Hollywood. Hollywood isn't allowed to have subtitles unless you are trying to get Best Picture. But I do think that Tina Fey kind of is slotted in here as like, haha, I am our Agatha Christie stand-in. I have jokes. I'm going to be a little bit over the top and have a personality unlike everyone else. And so for me, that worked because I was like, it was anachronistic, but it was a welcome anachronism because I thought everything else was so bone dry in terms of like just characters being vaguely interesting. I've seen some praises for Michelle Yeoh in this, and I think the performance is fine. She's kind of like eating her lines and like feasting upon them. But I find the lines very dully written, and I find her character utterly wasted in terms of like the potential of that character and what that character could be about. It's a movie that kind of just treats her like a plot point instead of, I mean, all the characters to that end feel that way. And yeah, I'll hold off on something else I'm going to bring up later, actually.
Yeah, I do agree. I feel like it doesn't really give the chance to Michelle Yeoh to shine, as far as like you said, like it is kind of a two-dimensional character. I still appreciate the effort here, as far as like you can tell she is like probably cast this because of the success of Everything Everywhere at Once, and she really seems to enjoy the chance to kind of really play a kind of like high octane, more melodramatic kind of role. And I do think there is something to be said about this one. I feel like it fits Branagh's aesthetics or sensibilities or whatever you want to call it, because it is kind of trying to be evocative of those like 50s horror movies. But yeah, at the same time, I just don't really think it really commits to the tone or the style enough to really pop in the way that I think is intended. And I think it does ultimately kind of drag, particularly in the middle, when it just like, we have like same as the second movie. I feel like there just kind of gets to this point where like we just have to like interview a bunch of people, and it's just characters sitting around in chairs, and Hercule Poirot is like, did you murder him? And he's like, no, I have his alibi. It's like, that's something a murderer would say. It just gets a little repetitive in that respect, but I think it's certainly better paced than Death on the Nile, where I remember that movie's like, is someone gonna die on the Nile? It's been like an hour, and
yeah, that movie takes way too long to get to the point. You're right.
Right.
This movie is definitely, this thing's a lean machine. But I think part of the problem with that is it doesn't really say anything all that interesting. It ends with this kind of like moment that I think you're supposed to feel a swell of pride or accomplishment. And instead, I was just a little bit like, I hope I hope we don't get another one, because like you really have played it out, in my opinion.
Well,
I want go ahead.
I mean, I think in the very broad sense, like the first movie, from what I remember, is like him kind of learning he can still like kind of be detective through his grief and the death of his wife or lover, or whatever it was. And the second one's like him realizing that being a detective doesn't have to define him, and like he can go through like this weird like scene where we get like a origin story for his mustache. I feel like that's something this movie is sort of missing, like just a weird kind of flourishes like that, like the fact that we get like a cold open establishing why
You don't think the apple bobbing thing wasn't weird,
where he just decides to do it for like seemingly no reason other than like him saying to himself, hey, maybe I should have some fun.
He just goes for it.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to put this costume, I'm going to keep this costume on,
Right.
And I'm going to stick my head inside this like thing where a bunch of kids had their mouths in, and I'm just like,
very, very natural, very, very believable.
That's what people do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I just wish there was a part where he'd like walked out of a room with Tina Fey and be like, well, Tina, it appears we both have autism. That's good to know.
It's a very niche reference to a thing I don't think most, if any, of our listeners are going to know. So that's a pretty good impression of that character, I will admit.
I have a few reviews of A Haunting in Venice here. This one, I'm going to start the negative one from Marmar. The twist is so obvious that Benoit Blanc would have solved the case after he had his first drink. I agree, except I would say even before his first drink. This was very predictable. Like, really? I mean, even Death on the Nile had a couple, like, it was also a pretty predictable mystery, but I felt like there were a couple things about it where I was like, oh, okay, yeah, all right. But this one, I feel like it's very easy to call everything.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier to you, but I was going to say, like, I'm not one that's good at guessing twists. I don't usually try to, but like even like this movie, I was just like, the first thing I thought, like, I guess like both parts of it, I'm like, oh, clearly this character is blank and this person is blank and working with blank. Like, it just was like, there's no real mystery. And I think that adds to the lack of suspense here, even though I think there are like some fun little like whenever Hercule Poirot is in the bathroom, it seems like Branagh as a director kind of comes alive as far as the horror goes. But those moments are pretty few and far between. But at least like with Death and Now, as you're mentioning, like I feel like they were better about like muddying the waters a little bit as far as like, well, it's probably blank, but like they add enough suspension and doubt where it's like, okay, I guess it could maybe be this guy. And it's like, nope, it was actually that one. Okay. But yeah, this one is just like, you're kind of just waiting for the inevitable. It's like, okay, I don't know why it's taking the world's greatest detective so long to figure this out. I figured it out like 45 minutes ago.
Here's a kind of middling review from Charlie, not Charlie Ridgely. This was all right. It was fine. Better than I was expecting, perhaps. Still very much a whodunit, just slightly disguised as a wannabe horror. The supporting cast is a bit weak, and I didn't really care for any of the characters, except, of course, for Mr. Poirot. There's just enough here to pique one's interest, but ever at just over 100 minutes, it still outstays its welcome. I wouldn't watch it again, but I'd always be interested, just enough to keep watching more entries if they are made. I disagree with a lot of this, and yet I would probably give it around the same score almost, maybe lower. But like, I do think the cast is good. I didn't care for any of the characters. I do agree with that. I don't think it outstays its welcome. I was happy that it ended, and I was like, thanks for not being any longer. But I wasn't like dreading this movie and be like, please finish, hurry up. And also, I don't want to keep watching more entries. So that's a weird one for me. What about you?
Well, like I said before, even though like I don't really love Venice movies and haven't been crazy about the sequels, I will watch as many of these as Kenneth Branagh wants to make, just because it just warms my heart. You know, like even just seeing the trailer for this, I'm just like, all right, Kenneth Branagh somehow, like you said, like even though Death on the Nile flopped and no one cared about that movie, somehow found a way to get this one made. And it's like, you know, good for him. You know, if this is what he wants to do with his Twilight years, I'm all for it. But yeah, I would also agree with you though, as far as like this is easily, I think, the shortest of these. Like it's definitely much. It didn't feel as long and tedious as Death of the Nile, which I think was a little over 2 hours. This is, like you said, pretty tight as far as these movies go, and yeah, I didn't feel like it dragged all that much, but at the same time, I didn't feel like I was like, like on the edge of my seat and like, yeah.
Last one here. This is a positive review from Kevflix and Chill. I think this is easily my favorite of the 3 Kenneth Branagh Hercule Poirot mysteries. Poirot is tasked with investigating whether the tragic occurrences of a particular residence in Venice can be traced to supernatural occurrences, or is there something else afoot? I really love this setup. It's almost more like a Scooby-Doo mystery, which is a compliment. Shot on location, the setting and scenery look really stunning, even though the film is largely contained within this single palazzo. We're treated to some gorgeous establishing shots of the Venetian rooftops, canals, and alleyways, but the palazzo interior too is equal parts beautiful and haunting. Branagh's cast is once again excellently assembled, even if it doesn't have quite as much star power. What I liked most about this entry was that I felt like this was the first time Branagh has given the audience all of the pieces to actually solve the mystery on their own. The best part of a good whodunit is trying to solve the mystery on your own, and so far, A Haunting in Venice has done the best job of laying the evidence out, not making the culprit too obvious, but also not making it so profoundly obscured that only Poirot himself would be able to solve it. My kids and I had a really fun time. The theater had a couple people dressed in cloaks, Venetian masks, and carrying lanterns, which created a fun ambiance. If you're hoping for lots of spooky horror elements, you'll likely be disappointed. Sure, there are a couple jump scare moments, but beyond that, it's truly not very spooky at all. I agree with a bunch of that. I still don't like the movie much, but these are all the things that I do like about the movie. I do have to break it to Keflix and Chill, though, where he's just like, not making it too obvious. Honestly, Keflix and Chill, I think your kids probably figured it out, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, wait, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't agree with this being the best of the 3 for the reasons I've kind of laid out already, but I do agree as far as it does feel like the most like a bottle episode, these, as far as like, it is that one location, it is pretty contained, like there's not like the travel element of it, but at the same time I do think this movie has a little bit more legwork it has to do as far as like keeping the characters in the place. Like basically they have with like Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile, it's like, well, they're on a train and well, they're on a boat, so it's like all the murder suspects are going to stay contained because they're not going to die.
They have to.
Yeah, but this one's a little bit more like, oh, it's raining out, so I guess no one's going to leave. It's a little bit. It's a little. I think
it was more of like they locked themselves in on purpose, middle of the night. They don't want anyone to leave because they want to figure it out, which is more Agatha Christie, like broadly, yeah.
But I do think that feels a little bit more maybe like, I don't know, contrived or a little bit more forced than I think what makes like Murder on the Orient Express a little bit more compelling is that the idea it's like, oh, these characters have to be contained here and like they're going to be in the same quarters as like the murder suspects. There's, I think, more ingrained suspense, and this one, I don't know, it doesn't quite have that element going for it, but at the same time, it also has things I think the other movies don't have going for it. So it's a mixed bag.
And then there was Nun II.
Yes. What are the positive and negative reviews for this one?
I have a negative review here. Sister Irene, this is from Jesse Snodden. Sister Irene, Taissa Farmiga, is called on once again to investigate and put a stop to what seems to be a growing evil. Not much to say about this one. There's the odd flicker of good stuff in here. The film sometimes uses cavernous space and shadow well. There's some good editing here and there. The performances are all decent, but it's mostly narratively generic and uninteresting stuff. The Nun II also takes itself far too seriously to be fun on a campy level as well. It's dull and overlong filmmaking without feeling, an unremarkable and forgettable movie. Yeah, I mean, there's literally nothing in this movie for me where I was watching it and I was just like, this is giving me something I haven't gotten before. I think in my review I even said, I mean, it doesn't even get the jump scares. I feel like if you're going to go to a Conjuring movie, at the very least, you're going in for some basic like jump scare formula stuff. This one is really weak on that front. I'm not even sure why.
John, you don't have to cover yourself. I know this was the first horror movie you've ever seen, and you were shaking in your boots and didn't know what to do when you're trying to act, proud and brave and be like, I wasn't scared, I wasn't spooked, but
was I supposed to be scared at the magazines?
Sure, yeah,
flapping in the air.
Yeah.
That was the great example too of a scene where it's just like, just do the thing you're gonna do. Like, hurry up. Like, it drawn on and on and on.
Well, my thing during that scene is just like, just walk away. Like,
yeah,
like,
what are you getting out of this?
Right.
Which, and by the way, I didn't mention Storm Reid is in this movie, and I am convinced that Storm Reid is a good actor. Here's the problem: Storm Reid keeps being not good in movies.
Yes,
and I don't get it. I'm just like, you're good at acting. Like, you can sell a line, but like, it's like, I don't know if it's her agent. I don't know if it's like, I don't know. Between this and like Wrinkle in Time, When They See Us, it's just like she constantly is like Relive or whatever that was changed in terms of the title. It's like every time she shows up in a movie, I'm just like, I don't buy it. Maybe she was better at that Missing one that she was in this year, which I didn't see that one. Maybe she was better in that.
Yeah, I didn't see that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought, like the scene where she's like smoking, like we kind of get introduced to her character. I'm like, okay, like she's kind of holding her own. And then everything after that, I was like, oh man, like I was hoping for the best, but yeah, it didn't quite.
Yeah, when I saw her smoking, I was just like, ooh, who's this cool cat?
Sure.
I do like Taissa Farmiga in both of these movies, but she's better than them. And also, this movie has such an opportunity with her, like in terms of the way her character is written, but it just does nothing.
I mean,
like, what was the character growth in this one? Have more faith, thoughts, and prayers.
Yeah, it's like they're just kind of like, well, you did the first time. Why don't you just do it again? Which it felt like
that was their
Catholic
argument.
Church was like the producers of the film. It's like, well, you did it the first time.
This movie is these movies are so scared of the Catholic Church. Let's be real. And like people coming down on them.
I will say, there is, we do get this kind of extended gruesome scene at the beginning, as I mentioned, where, a priest and an altar boy are tortured by the nun. And, the Catholic Church is just like, we got to do something.
Yeah. That's who this kid is scared of, right?
Right.
Not the, yeah.
But not to give too much away, but later there's a scene with like a little girl, like a newspaper girl or something. And she doesn't end the best, she's not the best for wear by end of her scene. But you don't see the Catholic Church, worried about that. They're not like, well, another person has died. It's a kid as well. We got to do something. The nun's getting
just
even
like,
worse.
Shut up.
Yeah, they just don't even talk about her again. So once again...
my guess was they didn't even know about her. And she just was considered disappeared or whatever.
I think it just shows that the Catholic Church doesn't care about the suffering of women, which has been well proven at this point.
I mean, it is the nun who's the villain, right?
Yeah. So if you're hoping for fun, you'll get Nun. The Nun.
Pretty sure a couple of the victims that they go through in that photograph thing was, I think there were like women, like nuns and stuff, whatever. Here is a more... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but again, I really don't know who cares about the Nun II, but I do... The one thing I was kind of appreciating at the beginning, it's like, okay, kids are going to like get killed in this. So it's like kind of interesting, like, okay, how gruesome are they going to get? And like, for the most part,
the body count is disgustingly low.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of annoying.
Because you get like these like annoying, like little like preteens. And they're like, oh, the nuns are going to have a field day with these.
Yeah, exactly. This movie is just so skittish. I'll give the Nun this, and it's same kind of deal for Haunting in Venice. I do appreciate there's a better attention to the practical effects. I think there were a couple of pieces like toward the end where I was like, it's not a total CGI fest, and then that changes. But here's a more middling review, but it's still pretty negative. It was mediocre. This is from Arizona Sun. It was mediocre, and it's not something I would watch again. Also, definitely should have killed at least one more person. This demon wants to be all powerful, but can't move past scared children. Come on, show us what real power looks like. With that said, I did enjoy the movie for the most part. It was fun enough while not really doing anything, so there's that. But I wouldn't recommend wasting money to watch in theaters unless you want to be disappointed. Yeah, there's no reason to watch this in a theater. If you're really curious, this is a red box movie through and through, or streaming, whatever. Like, turn all the lights off, whatever you want to do. Watch it at 6 a.m. if you really want to be scared.
Sure. Yeah, if you want to be a regular John Negroni.
And then I'll finish with a positive review here from Tom Hardy. Not the actor, but
okay. Yeah.
the vibe. I realize I'm in the vast minority when I say I actually enjoyed The Nun, talking about the first one. That being said, The Nun 2 is definitely an improvement over the original in a number of ways. One thing that's immediately apparent is the improved storyline, which is more fleshed out than the original and gives more emotional depth to its characters. Performances are a step up from the first. Taissa Farmiga and Jonas Blanquet are pretty good here. He plays Maurice, by the way. Unfortunately, Storm Reed's character doesn't have much of a purpose in the narrative, and the writer should have given her more to do. However, when it comes to entertainment, this is definitely well executed and provides some good scares. The suspense in some of the scenes is reminiscent of the first two Conjuring movies, which is a great sign. The cinematography and lighting are a major improvement over the first. Rejoice, we can actually see what's happening most of the time. This is my biggest qualm about the original, but the filmmakers definitely tried to avoid this same problem, and it paid off. There is a scene involving a newsstand here that is probably the most unique sequence of the entire franchise. I loved the way it was executed, and it's always cool to see directors try out new things. I know that people hate the Nun movies, but these films are definitely my guilty pleasure. Honestly, watching this in Dolby definitely added to the scares and experience. Overall, I think this is easily the best Conjuring spinoff and the third best of the series. I definitely recommend this, especially for fans of the franchise. Yeah, I'm not gonna rain on Tom Hardy's parade. Glad they enjoyed this, and my only thing that I'll push back on here specifically is that I feel like the Nun, like people are saying like the Nun 2 is better. The thing I liked about the first Nun, I think the jump scares are better. And I also think I liked the location, the setting, the mood, the atmosphere of that first movie. I do remember it. It was 5 years ago, but I remember it was more of a gothic setting. And I know, Will, you watched it with like The Exorcist or whatever. And, you were in not a great position with that movie. But I think the location was cool. And I liked the story of it better.
It's fascinating to me that you say you remember that first one because I see it more recently, and I could not tell you like three things that happened in that movie.
I don't remember the plot details specifically. I remember Taissa Farmiga. I remember some things about it. I don't remember a lot of the characters besides her, but I remember the basic plot. And I do remember kind of like the feeling of that movie. And what I liked about it at the time was that it was like, we're going back in time. It was like more of a period piece. I was a little disappointed that it was only in like, the 20th century, like, World War II sort of era or whatever, but like I think it's like 1940s. I would have preferred like let's go back to the 19th century. Let's do some horror like back then. I feel like every time we do those kinds of movies, it just doesn't like I know we got The Last Voyage of the Demeter and everything, but I still haven't seen that. So Will would say that I'm too scared to see The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Is that even a horror movie? It looks to me like just it looks to me like a thriller. It looks to me like a slasher.
You joke about that, but I feel like that movie
no joking
is more technically swashbuckling than like anything we've gotten in 2023 cinema.
You say so.
I mean,
I like the idea of Corey Hawkins in a swashbuckling movie, so I'll give you that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just saying. I mean, it's not. That movie's not great either. But I think it has things going for it. I definitely would prefer someone watch that over either the Nun movies.
Let's play the Rotten Tomatoes game for Haunting in Venice.
All right.
And since we're over time so much, we can be quick about it, I guess. 91 reviews counted. We don't have an audience score yet. So you just a tomato meter here. And it's going to keep changing, I think I'll be writing a review for Haunting in Venice. I should be. But what's your guess? 91 reviews counted so far. Mine's not counted yet. So it could go up or down. What do you think?
Well, you said that the reviews are positive so far, so I feel like
gave you a little bit of a baby hint.
Maybe. Is it like 75%?
It's higher, 80%.
80%?
I think it's going to drop. I think that some of the first wave of critics or so are kind of like, I'm seeing things of like, 3 stars out of 5. I'm also seeing, and I'm seeing higher reviews. I'm seeing like 4 out of 5. I'm seeing in a couple instances like 3.5 out of 4. I'm like, what? Hold on here a minute. But everybody has their choices. We don't have an audience score for this one, so how about we just finish out then? And I don't think we're gonna have cinema score, but the Nun 2. You want to do that one?
Sure. Yeah.
That one we have tomato meter and audience score. Interesting. Tomato meter, we have 104 reviews. Mine is one of them. I will just tell you, I did not give it a passing grade. So that's your little hint. What do you think?
Is it like 42%?
47%.
Okay.
You're off by 5 in both guesses. 104 reviews counted. Here's a little bonus question. Taissa Farmiga or Vera Farmiga? Who's your favorite?
Vera.
Yes. That is the correct answer, but Taissa Farmiga, I think she's going places. So she's Vera's younger sister. And I think like I don't know if these movies have ever established like they're related or they're supposed to be, because they have Lorraine Warren played by Vera Farmiga. The Nun II has like an end credit stinger that has to do with the Warrens. So
okay. I was gonna say, scan forward like 30 seconds if you don't want to be spoiled on the end credit. Or
I don't think that matters.
All right. I was gonna say, like,
by the way, Kimber Myers gave Nun II a positive tomato.
Why bother like getting Vera Farmiga if she's not even gonna say anything?
I agree with that. Yeah. Well, I think they probably took a scene from the next Conjuring movie, is my guess.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Kind of like with MCU, you know. This would be the fourth one, right?
Yeah. Is it filmed already?
I don't know. Okay. I haven't been keeping track of where they're at with the like larger franchise. We didn't mention with Nun II because we didn't really review it, but Akila Cooper, who has been behind *Malignant* and who's been behind *Megan*, the next Megan movie as well. She was like one of the screenwriters for this movie. She came up with the concept of the Nun II. And honestly, like, I didn't know that before I watched the movie. When I saw her in the credits, I was a little disappointed. I was just like, I feel like Akila Cooper is just like, she's been killing it, you know? And I feel like this movie was a bit of a, I don't know what happened. There were other screenwriters attached to this movie, to be fair, but I don't know. But anyway, this movie has not been doing well. I mean, the budget's not super crazy or anything, but it's only made about $32 million in over a week, which, okay, like, that's not great. But I do think that like these Conjuring movies don't really have to make a ton of money because their budgets tend to be pretty small. And also I think like they all sort of serve like a larger purpose in terms of like a shelf life. But in terms of Taissa Farmiga, that's the question I was leading to, Will, for you was, are they supposed to be related? Like Sister Irene and Lorraine Warren? Like, are we moving toward that? Because I kept wondering during this movie, I was like, does she become Lorraine Warren? Is there like something that happens where Sister Irene becomes an American paranormal investigator and marries this guy? Like, I kept wondering if he was going to show up like a younger version of Patrick Wilson, but no.
That thought crossed my mind. I don't think that's what they're doing. So I don't know if the timeline would add up there.
Yeah, because I mean, these movies take place in the 40s. It's 1947. Sister Irene is like in her 20s. You could maybe reasonably put her like her mid 20s. Lorraine Warren, I think in the Conjuring movies, it's like the 70s. So we're talking about 25 years later, and she's in her 40s, and she has a daughter who's like 9 years old. It kind of lines up, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where if they like show a black and white photo of her in the next movie, and they're like, "This is a younger me," or like, "This is my aunt," I think they're going to be
sisters, but
sisters or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised, but I think for the time being, we're supposed to just assume they're not, connected or whatever. But who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, we could be totally missing something, and people might be laughing as they hear this podcast,
but not laughing to the bank if this movie's not making money.
True. Audience score. What's your guess for that?
Audience score for which one? I don't think I did the audience score for
Nun II. Oh yeah, there is no audience score yet for Venice, but for Nun II we do have that since it has been
out. So I'm gonna say like 54%.
Higher, 74.
All right,
you're up by 20 points.
Yeah,
that's okay though. I feel like you in these guesses, it's kind of like me and watching horror movies.
Sure,
doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Or ever.
I mean, when I watch the Exorcist movie, which I'm going to watch that. No way I'm missing that.
Sure. I guess.
I mean, are you going to try to like, are you going to like throw a bunch of excuses at me of like, you didn't really watch it?
No, I told you before we recorded, I'm going to retire the bit because you finally watched an R-rated horror movie.
See about that. I don't buy it. But
if you keep flaking out, I'm going to bring the bit back.
I feel like it's blackmail almost. It's like, I am going to bully you if you don't do exactly what I say.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of Cinemaholics. What's coming out next week? I forget.
So, what is coming out this
I do have my list here. Give me 1 second. I'll bring it up.
Is it Dumb Money?
We do have Dumb Money, but I don't know if that's this coming week, but I do have it on the schedule. Here we go. So the month of September. So Dumb Money is coming out the same week as A Haunting in Venice, but I don't know if that's like limited release. There's Cassandro, which is going to be in select theaters and then coming to Prime Video. We have Expendables coming out the week of the 22nd.
Okay.
And Spy Kids Armageddon is going to be on Netflix. Flora and Son is going to be, I believe, either on Apple TV Plus. It might be in select theaters. I don't have that 100%. There's also the Neon movie, It Lives Inside.
Let's do Flora and Son, I guess.
Flora and Son would be the one that I want to talk about because John Carney.
Yeah, why not?
Who, one of my favorite filmmakers. Sing Street, one of my favorite movies ever. So that could be the one. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, nothing else. I mean, I'd be curious about the Spy Kids movie for nostalgia's sake and for my...
I'm not going to watch Expendables. I've never seen any of them. I don't care about them at all.
I mean, I saw the first 3, but like, I generally keep forgetting that movie's a thing. So
I honestly thought there were more than 3 of them. I was like, we're only on the 4th? I would have thought we were on the 6th by now. I don't know.
You might be thinking of Rambo or something.
Who knows? I mean, well, Rambo is a different story because that's,
sure.
But okay. I think the bigger question is going to be, are we going to talk about Saw 10, Dix the Musical? That's the next week after this next week. So there's also The Creator.
Yeah, The Creator. I'm excited for The Creator. I'm excited.
Creator is the one that I would pick. I don't want to watch another Saw movie. I'm done with that. And Dix the Musical, I don't know if I'll be able to see it.
Yeah, no, I've heard Dix the Musical is pretty good.
I want to watch it, but I don't know if it's limited release. I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch a screening. So it just kind of depends.
I think it's wide. It's A24. So
I'm just saying it just might be one of those things that might eke out into October for us to cover, but I don't know for sure.
I don't know. Well, I think you have a time limit, so we'll have to figure this out off the air, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back soon to talk about something, I'm sure. But from the Internet California, I'm John Negroni.
And from the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Will Ashton. Boo!
Okay. See you next time.
Bye.